Hello, everyone. I see a great number of participants already connected and continuing to join us. My name is Azat Irmanov. I'm UNODC Program Officer focusing on countering corruption. I work with UNODC Regional Office for Central Asia. Welcome to this deep dive session on whistleblower protection in business. Okay. This virtual session is organized by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime in collaboration with the United Nations Global Compact. This session is the 7th in the deep dive webinar series, with more recent sessions covering gender dimensions of business integrity, the implementation of anti-corruption programs in companies, and measuring anti-corruption compliance in your company. The webinar series addresses a range of topics inspired by the United Nations Global Compact Management Model and provide first-hand experience on how to strengthen integrity in your company. We welcome you all. Thank you for your time and interest. Before we start, I'd like to ask you to list your organization and where you're joining from in the chat. Please also note that the webinar is video recorded, and the video footage and other relevant materials will be published at UNODC Business Integrity Portal. So you will have a chance to go through the video, and if you would like to refresh your memories, you will have a chance to do that. We have made available interpretation services for this session through Francais, Espanol, and Portuguese. Look down below your screen and find the globe pictogram. Then select the language you want. We encourage your active engagement throughout this session. Kindly share your questions and comments in the chat. And we will also ask you for your inputs during this session using Mentimeter. For this, you will have to use your phone or computer. Kindly have them ready in the next couple of minutes. Today, we will deep dive into such an important topic as establishing the organizational environment that enables internal reporting systems by protecting those who had courage to act against fraud and corruption and report on wrongdoing. To provide you with the most relevant information and tools, we need to understand how closely the audience is acquainted with the topic of whistleblower protection. Let's have a short poll at Mentimeter. The results will be seen on the screen. Shortly, you will see the QR code or link, so you can use your camera, your phone camera. Okay. Here it is. Please scan the QR code so we could have a short poll. Colleagues, we have only 14 people connected. Colleagues, or dear participants, let us know if you have any trouble with connecting to the Mentimeter. Okay, the number is growing over 300. Good. So the first question, why do you think it is important for companies to have a whistleblower protection policy in place? Please write a short answer, just a couple of words, and we will see the cloud of responses that demonstrate the most frequently mentioned reason. Okay, very interesting results. So, most frequent reason to explain the importance of whistleblowers protection is, let's see, to safeguard whistleblowers, of course. Counter corruption, transparency, accountability, and integrity. Challenging toxic culture and reprimand the abuse of human rights. Compliance. Okay. Interesting. Awareness by management. Seguridad de la información. Responsibility. Good. Okay, I think we have common understanding of the reason. So let us move to the next question. Does your company have a whistleblower protection policy in place? Okay, so most of responses indicate that your organization has such mechanisms, and I hope today you will find the ideas how to improve its effectiveness. And of course, participants from organizations that do not have such whistleblower protection mechanisms will be interested in having the understanding of how such systems should be built. So let us move to the next question. What do you think is the difference between a whistleblower and another reporting person? This is also a cloud of responses, just a couple of words. A whistleblower can blackmail. Interesting. Anonymously. This should be HR or legal difference. Maybe, let's see. Must be a trusted person. La evidencia. A whistleblower takes risks. I think this policy is important because it is an effective way to report grievances within your company anonymously. But the question was, why do you think the difference? What do you think the difference? Okay, so no idea. I hope this webinar will provide you with relevant information. So you will have full understanding what is the difference, if there is any kind of difference. But should you have any unanswered questions at the end of the webinar, please write them in chat. So we will try to address them during Q&A session in the end of the webinar. Thanks to all participants for active engagement. Now going back to our key topic of discussion. Why do we say that whistleblower protection is important? Let me share some figures and facts with you. The Association of Certified Fraud Examiners in its report to nations demonstrated that organizations lose about 5% of revenue to fraud each year. According to their findings, typical fraud case lasts 12 months before detection, with average loss per case about 1.7 million USD and median loss about 145,000 USD. And 43% of fraud cases were detected by tips or reports. More than half of tips come from employees, and nearly 1/3 come from vendors and customers. And having reporting hotlines and procedures in organizations reduces the median loss twice. So I think those figures explain the importance of having reporting lines and whistleblower protection systems by themselves. So during the next part of the webinar, we will have two technical presentations that will help us to have a common ground for discussion. And then we will launch the discussion with the help from our esteemed panelists. And we also plan to have some time to ask our experts to answer the questions that we will receive from participants during the Q&A session. To provide you with more details and ideas on practical steps of deploying effective whistleblower protection system within your organization, we have a great team of presenters and speakers. Allow me to introduce them. Ms. Jennifer Starvery Bradford, Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice Office at Corruption and Economic Crime Branch at UNODC. Jennifer has been with the UN since 1998, focusing on gender and corruption. She led the publication The Time Is Now and coordinates efforts to quantify technical assistance needs from the UNCAC review process. From 2010 to 2013, Jennifer established the UNODC National Program for Ethiopia. She holds Masters in Law from Lund University and Raoul Wallenberg Institute for Human Rights and Humanitarian Law. We have also Ana Luisa Arana, Senior Manager at Anti-Corruption Collective Action Program of United Nations Global Compact. Ana holds a PhD in political science. She has a rich background in anti-corruption research and academia with accolades from UN Women and the OECD for her contribution to gender equality and anti-corruption. We also have a great team of panelists. Mr. Raymond Ram, founder and managing principal of Grey Matter Forensic Advisory, Malaysia. Raymond is a leading advocate against economic crime with expertise in financial forensic, fraud risk management, and AML/TFT compliance. As Secretary General of Transparency International Malaysia, he had led numerous fraud investigations and developed national audit and anti-corruption guidelines. And Raymond is regular media contributor on economic crime. Mr. Christian Hauser, Professor of Business Economics and International Management at Swiss Institute for Entrepreneurship at the University of Applied Science of the Gießen, Switzerland. Christian is chairing the Whistleblowing Working Group of Ethics and Compliance. He also chairs the Principles for Responsible Management Educational Working Group, PRME, on anti-corruption, and heads the first PRME Business Integrity Action Center in Europe. Mr. Brian Said Sanchez Flores, Legal Chief of legal chief at Agropecuaria Aliar, La Facenda, Colombia. Brian is a specialist in commercial law and candidate for masters in business administration with professional experience in different sectors, advising mainly on commercial law and civil law, accountability and compliance. And now, going back to the main part of our webinar, let me invite Jennifer to speak about foundational questions of whistleblower protection. Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Azat, and welcome everybody once again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, bonjour, buenos dias, buenas tardes, wherever you are. We are really pleased to have you here with us again. Let's see, we're nearing 1,000 participants, which is fantastic. So my name is Jennifer Sawyer Bradford, and I am actually stepping in for my colleague who is the real expert on whistleblower protection. And I'm going to try to run you through a little bit the international standards and try to give you some definitions and a better understanding of the requirements. Next slide, please. So who is a whistleblower? Definition and international standards. Next slide, please. So the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime is the guardian of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Therefore, all the work we do within the corruption and economic crime branch has a link and its root in convention. The convention cites very clearly in Article 33, and you will see it here on the screen, what the article actually says, and it is measures to provide protection against any unjustified treatment. That's one part. The next part is for any person who reports in good faith and on reasonable grounds to the competent authorities any facts concerning offences established in accordance with this convention. Now, these are very interesting because it does mean that we should look at any unjustified treatment. And it really does highlight the fact, and we'll go into this a little bit more in depth in the next slides, that the person who reports is in good faith, meaning that the person doesn't necessarily need to know whether what they report is an act of corruption or not. In December last year, the Conference of the States Parties, that is the conference that unites all those who have signed up to the convention across the world, that's 189 states, plus the European Union, they met in Atlanta, Georgia, and they adopted a resolution, Resolution 10.8, on whistleblower protection. And it was a call to, and a reminder, a call to action, if you wish, to implement this Article 33. And it requires or requests states to develop appropriate measures to fully and effectively provide protection against this unjustified treatment. So in a sense, it goes one step further than the convention in that it mentions this fully and effectively. Furthermore, it extends the protection when appropriate also to not only the whistleblower, so the reporting person, to their relatives and other persons close to them. And I dare say that this has come based on our experience of seeing how retaliation can take place not only against the person who decides to report, but also those who are close to them. These are very important elements to take into consideration when we look further at what it means to be a whistleblower. And, you know, I started by saying definitions. Well, one of the things that isn't mentioned here on the slide, but I will come back to over and over again, is that in line with the Convention's Article 8, Paragraph 5, states shall endeavor, so shall try, to establish measures and systems to require public officials to make declarations on, for instance, benefits or substantial gifts or so with respect to their functions within the public office. It also requires to establish these systems to be able to allow staff to report on any suspected wrongdoing. Next slide, please. Now, there are different forms of reporting. And there is the question, who is a whistleblower? The difference between reporting from the general public is that a whistleblower has a very personal scope, meaning that they come from within the organization. This is very important to understand because we often refer to whistleblowing in the press as somebody who reports corruption, but in the context of the convention, the whistleblower is actually the person who reports from within, which means that you have very other different requirements when it comes to protection, because this is something in your professional context, in your work environment, where most of us spend more hours awake than we do at home, for instance. So there is this personal scope, right? And I do want to point out that there is a requirement to report to relevant authorities. Once again, there has to be systems in place. There is a requirement for procedural protection, meaning a confidentiality surrounding, and then at times surrounding the actual reporting. And then the dedicated frameworks for an extension of the frameworks related to protection of witnesses, victims, and experts. Now, this is a different category in the context of the convention. It is listed under Article 32, so it's a whole separate article. So when we look at the personal scope, who can be a whistleblower? Well, actually, there is no definition. The requirement is just that it comes from within, from the professional context. And generally speaking, we talk about anybody, all kinds of workers, all kinds of workplaces. And this is really important to know because you never know who it is who will overhear a conversation or who will maybe gain access to information. Whether they should have access to it or not is a different matter. But there is this uncovering of wrongdoing. And the material scope, once again, this we look within the UN, we look at having as wide a definition as possible. Once again, why? Because there is no need to be sure that what you are actually reporting is a corruption offense. It can be other form of criminal offenses, not only corruption, but it is not for the person who decides to report to know in advance, as long as they are doing this in good faith. And the suspected wrongdoing, let's call it that, can have happened, be happening, or be considered to be likely to happen in the future. So there is no limit in time or in person as long as they are within the company. Next slide, please. So here I want to talk a little bit about the differentiated impact of gender in the reporting process. So there's a difference in the reporting itself. And here we can look at just general crime statistics where women are much more risk averse. They are much more hesitant about reporting crime and even engaging in crime, because let's face it, women can be both victims and perpetrators. And this also in other aspects, in particular to reporting suspected wrongdoing. Women, to a greater extent than men, take into consideration the reliability, the confidentiality, and the reporting system, the chances of retaliation should they be found out, but also the reality of re-victimization, because whistleblowing can relate to many different contexts, also things and matters such as sexual corruption. So this means that women often wait longer to report corruption, right? Or report any suspected wrongdoing. There's also a difference in the intensity of the retaliation. Now, usually we would say that there's mainly a professional element to the retaliation, a suspension, a dismissal, termination of contract. There can be intimidation, harassment, even a demotion, and a reduction of wages, and so on and so forth when we look at the retaliation elements. But for women in particular, a lot of the social norms and stereotypes come into play. That women are difficult, they complain too much, they gossip, etc. And there we see that women, once out, rarely get back. They stand a much larger risk of actually being cut out from the circle, the professional circle completely. Whereas men, and we see this generally across corruption offenses, due to various gendered networks, have a much easier chance, much greater chance of getting back into the game and finding a professional career in the same area. And here I do want to talk a little bit about younger whistleblowers who may also face backlash from their families. Once again, we're talking stereotype and social norms and so forth. So that's a little bit about looking at the various elements of whistleblowing. And next slide, please. UNODC, of course, has various knowledge products on this. Speak Up for Health that you see on the right talks about whistleblower protection reporting, whistleblower reporting and protection systems in the health sector primarily, but don't let yourself be misguided by the title. These systems can be applicable in public sector and private sector and various other parts of society as well. So the system as such and the indications and recommendations in the publication are valid across the board. We also have here reporting mechanisms in sport, and of course, the good practices and protection of reporting persons in relation to Article 33 of the Convention. These are all available online and free to download. Next slide, please. So this will bring me to the end of my part of the presentation. Before I hand over, you see here Louise's contact in case you have further questions or requirements. Also, obviously, reaching out to the Global Compact and the colleagues is also possible. And I hope that this has provided sufficient input and foundation to move ahead to the next presentation. Azad, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Jennifer. Thank you for a very useful and valuable presentation that makes us show that we are on the same page with basic definition and concept of whistleblower protection and even aspects of gender dimension. It is very important for us to move on, and now I'd like to invite Anna to share with us her vision on practice of whistleblower protection in business. Anna, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Azad. It's a pleasure for me to be here today in this webinar with UNODC once again. As I was presented, I'm Ana Luisa Aranha. I'm a senior manager at the United Nations Global Compact. I oversee the Anti-Corruption Collective Action Program, and I'm here today to talk about whistleblower protection in business. So we just saw the presentation of Jennifer about whistleblower in general, about the UNCAC, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which is targeted mostly to governments. It also talks about the private sector. But now we are going to delve into a little bit to the private sector. So next slide, please. This is the management model of the United Nations Global Compact, and to a far extent, it guides our Deep Dive Academy series on business integrity. These are the practical steps that Global Compact puts to fight corruption. So for those who work closely with compliance is commit, assess, define, implement, measure, and then communicate. And of course, always using the data that you get to strengthen your compliance, integrity, and anti-corruption program. In the publication of Global Compact, you're going to find that nothing can guarantee that wrongdoing will not happen. So your compliance, anti-corruption, integrity program, doesn't matter how you call it, but that you have something in place. It's really to prevent, but you have to assume that it may happen. And you have to have appropriate mechanisms to find wrongdoing. And what the management can do is to ensure that appropriate systems, internal communication plans, and reporting mechanisms are in place that assure that they are the first to know of any potential or actual problems. As Mr. Azad was putting at the beginning, usually the people report internally, and that's from the company perspective. When you want to find your corruption case or your irregularity or the wrongdoing, you want to be the first one to know what's going on, especially what's going on in a wrong way, so that you can solve whatever is happening. If no such reporting procedures exist, such as a whistleblowing channel, it is more likely that malpractices will continue, because you will not find out, you won't have a way to address whatever is going on internally. So you need a tone from the top, you assess your risks, and I'm gonna talk how you can use the reports from your whistleblowing channel to help you to conduct a corruption risk assessment, because it's a good way to find what's going on internally. You define from your corruption risk assessment what type of mechanisms you need in place, and many times can be a whistleblowing channel is one of the mechanisms that you need to build internally. You implement your whistleblowing channel, you measure how you're going, and then you communicate. And there is a lot of discussions if you should disclosure or not what is reported to your company in terms of transparency to the wider society. It's up to the company to decide whether to report or not. But whenever a company is ready and mature enough to report what is going on internally, it also shows a greater and a stronger anti-corruption program. So next one, please. Why establish whistleblower policies in your business? So I think the first things first. So the business case for whistleblowing protection, or even whistleblower policies. Whistleblower policies and protections are relevant to increase the detection and reduce the opportunity for illegal and inappropriate conduct, including whistleblower retaliation. So it's a good way for a company to detect and reduce the opportunity for illegal and inappropriate conduct, because now people know that there is a mechanism that people can safely report to. So people would feel more inclined for good behavior, because you know that if you go to a wrongdoing or irregularity, somebody can report. Most whistleblowers, as I was mentioning, most whistleblowers first report suspected wrongdoing within their organizations. So that's the whistleblower definitions, as Jennifer was mentioning. It is therefore essential that the organizations provide safe and effective mechanisms to receive and address these reports, as well as robust protection to whistleblowers. And companies wishing to engage in international business opportunities are expected to establish whistleblowing systems in order to ensure legal compliance and oversight of your supply chain. So next one, please. What are the good practices in terms of whistleblower protection, whistleblower policies? The system, your whistleblower system, should enable employees, and it's a good practice to open your whistleblowing channel to other stakeholders, such as vendor or customers, to report suspected wrongdoing and irregularities. So these are the good practices, not necessarily they are required by law. So one of the first questions in the Mentee survey is that why you should have a whistleblowing protection or whistleblowing system. It's to comply with the law. Of course, every company wants to do that. But beyond that, you can find the irregularities, and you can find a good practice around the world that say that you can do it internally, but you could also consider doing it externally. And the system should ensure confidentiality. This is basic. This is crucial. Reporting a wrongdoing burdens a lot for a whistleblower. So you should, as a company, provide confidentiality. And you could also consider allow anonymous reporting, people that report on an anonymous base. And somebody was mentioning in the Q&A that what is going to protect somebody from defamation? First, you need to have a robust whistleblowing channel. It's not the internet or like a social media account. They're just going to go there and talk about people wide in the open. You have to have a system. You have to have processes. And this, you need to ensure confidentiality from who is reporting. And of course, you also don't want to put a target on who was reported before you can conduct an investigation and before you can assess what's going on. So you need to have a robust system. The internal whistleblowing system must be reliable for employees, which requires processing in due time and following up on reports. This is very important because you can very easily set up a whistleblowing channel. It's there. It's the way for the company to say, I have a whistleblowing channel, I comply. But your compliance team takes forever to process if it's the compliance team that deals with the reports. It can take forever to answer. It can take a lot of time, or it even processes very fast, but people doesn't know. The people who report doesn't have any mechanism, internal mechanism to follow up on what's going on the report that they did. So if you want to build trust, and I'm sure that the panel is going to discuss this later, if you want to build a culture of integrity, you have to have a system that processes the reports in due time, whatever this due time is internally, if it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, and follow up on the reports. The whistleblowing system should provide safeguards to encourage and protect whistleblowers who report wrongdoings. We reiterate that a lot because we do see a lot of retaliation, and it's a burden to report. So whenever you're setting up a whistleblowing channel or whistleblowing policies, you have to think about protection. And the system should enable the organization to record the complaint, its investigation, its response, and how the whistleblower was protected. So that you can have this information internally that can feed your own compliance and integrity program so that you can make it better. If you see, for example, that a lot of reports are coming from a specific department, a lot of reports are coming from a specific type of offense, then you can, for example, tailor your trainings or tailor the assessment that you were doing from the organization. Next slide, please. Recommendations from the international organizations working on whistleblowing. Safeguards and protection. Again, reporting wrongdoing or systemic misconduct can be stressful, and whistleblowers all too often face retaliation and threats, as well as significant personal and legal risks. So protect the people that are going there and they're blowing the whistle and they're telling people what's going on wrong in the organization. The organization can look at the whistleblowing channel as a powerful way to discover what's going on and to strengthen its culture, strengthen its own integrity and anti-corruption program. As I mentioned at the beginning, during your corruption risk assessment, the organization can use the whistleblowing channel as an internal source for analyzing a log of past corruption cases and the allegations, so that you can strengthen your corruption risk assessment. In terms of incentives for business integrity, in most of the jurisdictions now, if a company has effective reporting channels in place, penalties may be reduced or declined altogether. So also thinking strategically, if you have a robust compliance program in place, and many times this means having at least a whistleblowing channel and a whistleblowing policy, this can help you whenever you are in trouble. For example, if you show that you had ways to find irregularity, that you try to address that irregularity, for example. Internal whistleblowing systems should provide for enforceable, transparent, and timely mechanisms to receive and follow up on complaints of detrimental conduct, interference, and breach of confidentiality, sanction perpetrators, whoever does this, and ensure full reparation of affected whistleblowers and other protected persons via remedial measures and compensation. The organization should handle reports in a safe and secure manner by providing training and guidance to all of its employees as a best practice. Next and last, whistleblower system recommendations. So the top leadership usually is the responsible and accountable for the effective implementation of its internal whistleblowing system. They should set a clear tone from the top in support of speaking up and listening up about wrongdoing. This is easily said than done, as I would say, because I could see in my experience sometimes organizations that they tell the employees use the whistleblowing channel as the very, very, very last resource, or if possible, don't use it at all. They're afraid of the whistleblowing channel. And I think the message from the tone of the top could be a little bit different in terms of supporting the employees or the vendors or the supply chain. Like if you see something going on, if you see something that is wrong, use the whistleblowing channel, speak up. That we are going to listen and take it seriously, and we will consider whatever you are reporting. And without the explicit consent of the whistleblower, their identity and any identifying information should not be disclosed beyond those persons competent to receive or follow up on the reports. This is, once again, the confidentiality. Information about the organization's whistleblowing channel and system should be highly visible and accessible via a wide range of media and channels. If we are talking about a large company, most likely we are thinking about something online, so a website or even an app on the phone. If we are talking about an SME, for example, the whistleblowing channel can be something easier. It could be an email that just addresses a specific person in the office, or I've seen, for example, SMEs that their whistleblowing channel, it's actually a box that people can put the report, and you have two boxes, one in the men's bathroom, the other one on the women's, because it's a moment of privacy, let's say, that people don't go everybody together to the bathroom. So you have a little bit of privacy that you could report. So the organization can be creative. It really has to be addressed to the size of your company, but it should be visible and accessible in a wide range of media and channels. And there should be multiple reporting channels that are safe and easily accessible and enable reporting in writing or orally, for example. And Jennifer was mentioning the difference between men and women in reporting. For example, you also have to think about if it's orally, if the person has to go personally to report. If it's a woman and she's going to report sexual harassment, for example, she would feel much more comfortable doing this to another woman, not to a man. So it's also differences that you have to take into account whenever you are putting together your whistleblowing system. And the organization should prohibit detrimental conduct. There is any threatened, recommended, or actual act or omission, direct or indirect, which causes or may cause harm linked to whistleblowing and any interference with whistleblowing. The next one, I believe, are the resources. Business Against Corruption, a framework for action. This is a Global Compact resource, and a UNODC one, good practices in the protection of reporting persons, that also addresses the private sector. And we also share with you other sources from international organizations such as the ICC or the Transparency International as well. They also work with whistleblowing channels, systems, and mechanisms. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Over to you, Mr. Azad.
Anna, thank you. Thank you for very, very useful and important information. The tone from the top is very important, and of course, confidentiality is indeed a highly important aspect of whistleblower protection systems. And through the questions in the chat, I can see that our participants also are looking for the answers to the questions on how to ensure confidentiality. So after your presentation, I believe our participants have some answers. If not, dear participants, stay with us. I'm sure you will have the answers. in the next part of our webinar. And now I think we are ready to open panelist discussion. Dear participants, please send your questions to the chat. I can see we have a lot of questions. Some of them answered, some of them not. And I hope at the Q&A session, if we have enough time, we will try to address them. Now, let me open the discussion. And my first question is for Brian. Brian, what would you say?
Yes, hi.
What would you say? Yeah, so what would you say are the critical elements of an effective whistleblower protection policy?
Thank you, Zad, and thank you for all of the audience to be here. So the first thing that we need to analyze and understand that it's an effective whistleblowing program. It's one that was created according to the company size. So as well as happens with the clothes. I mean, I know that it sounds basic, but keep in mind of this example. Before you buy a pair of shoes, you need to know the size that you need. So the main idea of this example allow us to understand that creating a whistleblower program needs to take into account elements like the organization size, the business context, the third parties, and of course, involve the top executives, right? So this approach will facilitate the development of the whistleblower program to have a speak up culture, as Anna said before, right? And ensuring no fear of retaliation, and the policy can have sustainable controls over time. So it brings me to another critical topic to emphasize that the success of the policy depends on the level of dedication and of course the boundaries that the company established. So that means that the company need to understand that this is a progressive program. So we need to get little by little according to the context of the company. So then that also means that the company should designate a person or a department to lead this process. And the last part that we need to focus on is that the companies should destinate or will require some economic, technological, and of course, human resources at least to take action in this process.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Very useful points for those who plan to develop whistleblower protection policies for their own organizations. And in this regard, I think it is important to have certain understanding of the regulatory frameworks. So my second question is for Christian. Christian, are you with us?
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Hi, glad to see you. So the question is, what are the existing legal frameworks for whistleblowers protection in your region? And maybe, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Asad, and greetings from Switzerland. So the region I'm referring to is Europe, and specifically also the European Union. But as most of you, I think, know, Switzerland is not a member state of the European Union. So I'm referring also then to the context in Switzerland. So when we talk about the European Union, we saw in recent years a far-reaching development, right? So in 2019, the European Union adopted a directive on the protection of persons who report breaches of the union law. This was very important because the topic of whistleblowing is quite controversial in many European countries. So it was very difficult on national levels to establish whistleblowing protection. So therefore, it was important that the European Union took this first step, and quite recent, right, 2019, to establish a whistleblowing directive. And the member states had 2 years until the end of 2021 to transpose these provisions into their national legal and institutional systems. And I mentioned already that whistleblowing is sometimes controversial as a topic, right? We saw that most member states were reluctant to adopt their national legislation within the time frame given by the European Union. If I remember correctly, at the end of the original time frame, I think only 2 or 3 member states already had their legal systems in place. And only recently, earlier this month, the last member state, Poland, adopted now, after massive pressure by the European Union, its own legal system. So they have to pay a lot of fines due to this delay, right? But this shows that it's, for many countries, it's difficult to introduce these whistleblower protection legislation. And this leads me to Switzerland, which, as I already mentioned, is not a member state, so it's not required to adopt a legal framework that to comply with the European Union provisions, right? And actually, it's very, very difficult in Switzerland to adopt a whistleblowing protection legislation. So we have in Switzerland whistleblowing protection for people working in the public sector, specifically for those working at the federal level. But for people working in the private sector, there's no law on whistleblowing protection. We had 2 attempts by the Swiss government in the last decade. Both were voted against by the parliament. And we had earlier this year a motion by a Swiss parliamentarian who wanted to restart this process. And again, the parliament voted against it. So it's, very difficult. But for companies operating in an international environment, right, you need to know which are the best practices anyway, right? And I think Anna pointed out rightly that maybe certain aspects of a whistleblowing protection is not mandatory by law, but as a company, you should follow it anyway, because it's international best practice in the business community nowadays to have these kind of whistleblower protection in place. Over to you again, Assad.
Thank you. Thank you, Christian. That's great food for thought. The legal framework looks as a really complex set of regulations with certain limitations and depending on the jurisdictions you work in. In these circumstances, whistleblowers may feel not confident or be lost in doubt about their action to report or not to report. And in this regard, I have a question for Raymond. Raymond, could you tell us what is your critical assessment on incentives and rewards for whistleblowing? What do you see as the pitfalls and risks faced by whistleblowers, and how can these be mitigated?
Thank you, Azad. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm the only one, I guess, from the Southeast Asian region, right? So I'm from Malaysia. Now, just to speak about the current landscape in Malaysia, marked by the recent high-profile corruption cases that we have, it definitely underscores a robust whistleblower mechanism that's required, and taking the success of prosecution led by incentivized whistleblowers in many OECD countries that we see, we have recently launched our national anti-corruption strategy. And part of this strategy is to relook at incentives, at rewards for whistleblowers. However, just to give a bit of my opinion on this matter, these incentives must definitely be carefully calibrated to avoid the pitfalls of the value versus volume paradox that we have, right? So where the focus should always remain on high quality, substantive reports, rather than just an overwhelming volume of less credible claims that come in. See, while financial incentives can indeed motivate individuals to come forward with critical information that is needed during investigation, they also carry the risk of encouraging false and aggregated claims driven by prospect for monetary gain. What I mean here is reporting not in good faith, right? So this can strain investigative resources, potentially harm individuals, complicating efforts to address genuine misconduct. Now, furthermore, whistleblowers in Malaysia, as we can see now, or even elsewhere, often face significant retaliations, including job losses, harassment, social ostracism, which can deter other potential whistleblowers from coming forward in the future. Now, some of the main factors I think was mentioned again previously by the principal, we need to meet this risk, right? And it's imperative to strengthen legal protections for whistleblowers, ensuring comprehensive safeguards against retaliation, including maintaining strict confidentiality, providing secure, anonymous reporting platforms as well, and establishing clear, transparent processes when it comes to investigating these reports. Now, moving forward, I would like to just highlight a few things. Just to take from what the presenters have presented earlier, what my colleagues here have also mentioned, we understand here is that in order to get tips from whistleblowers, we need to have tip first. What I mean by that is that we need to have trust, independence, and protection. I think a lot has been mentioned about trust, how we need to provide feedback to our whistleblowers, how do we need to make sure that we take timely action. A lot has also been mentioned about protection. Crucial here is also independence. How do we make sure the channel that whistleblowers use are indeed confined within the space of an independent party, either within the organization or a third party, then later on investigated appropriately. Yeah.
Thank you, Raymond, and thank you, Brian and Christian, for your insightful responses. It is clear now that effective whistleblower protection policies are multifaceted, requiring a balance of legal understanding, organizational support, and strategic incentives. So, but I think we need to go a bit deeper. Let us dive deeper into legal issues of anonymous reporting, the unique compliance of challenges faced by small companies and SMEs, and practical examples of managing whistleblower cases. So my next question is for Christian. A modern reporting system should allow for anonymous reporting, as this helps to protect whistleblowers. However, anonymous reporting is often viewed very critically, and in some countries, anonymous reports do not have to be investigated. So what does your research show about this issue?
Yeah, thank you very much, Asad. And I think we already touched this sensitive topic of anonymity, right? And also in one of the chat contributions, right, it was mentioned that people always fear if people can make anonymous reports, they will abuse this right to report. And of course, many countries, specifically countries that have dictatorships in their history, right, where reporting to the authorities was misused, they often feel reluctant to allow anonymous reporting. And therefore, for example, in the German law, it is not mandatory to follow up on anonymous reports, right? It should be followed up, but it's not mandatory, right? So therefore, we see this, it's a controversial topic. We did research on it several times in several European countries, including the UK, Germany, France, and Switzerland. And we always try to figure out if there is a correlation between anonymous reports and false claims, abusive reports. And in none of our surveys, we were able to establish any correlation there. So we don't see any correlation. Of course, we need to protect those that are the persons that are claimed to of misconduct, right? So they have also rights, right? So therefore, we cannot, because someone reports something, we cannot say the person is guilty, right? So that is, but we see that this abusive reports, at least in the countries I mentioned, is very, very minor, and there is no correlation with anonymity. On the contrary, we see that people, in the first place, they want to report anonymously because they don't feel very confident in the system. But as soon as they see that they can trust the system, they reveal their identity as well, right? So therefore, I think we should take cautious action regarding anonymity, but there is no need to think that anonymity will open up a box of the Pandora that we cannot have at the end, right? On the contrary, nothing of our research indicates towards this.
Thank you, Christian. I think this is very important and valuable information for businesses trying to apply organizations specific model for keeping whistleblowers secure. But I think it is these findings are also important for the governments who are trying to promote anti-corruption reforms. So I think we need to pay some more time in the next session, maybe, or any other events to explain the importance of anonymity of reporting. And so moving forward, I think we need to have more understanding in compliance challenges, because it's very crucial. So my next question is for Raymond. What, in your opinion, are some of the biggest compliance challenges that smaller companies and SMEs face in the implementation of whistleblower protection policies?
Thank you, Azad. I think Anna has touched on this earlier as well, talking about SMEs and how the constraints when it comes to SMEs compared to larger organizations is different. SMEs definitely face significant challenges in implementing the whistleblower protection mechanisms we've been talking about throughout, due to the limited resources, the expertise they may not have. Unlike larger organizations that often has a dedicated compartment, right? Financial capacity to invest in sophisticated reporting systems or platforms per se. Now, ensuring anonymity and confidentiality within smaller workforces like SMEs is also as the risk identification much higher. We may know who is reporting, what is going out there, what is being done. Finally, we also see SMEs with partial relations due to potential conflict of interest and their limited staff. Now, some of the ways that we can look at address and how we are working with SMEs here as well is they can leverage on external resources, such as the third-party whistleblower hotlines, compliance services where you have a whistleblower platform being set up. For example, a platform that we have set up at Grey Matter, which is our whistle, is a third-party whistleblowing platform, which utilizes also AI chatbots to, in a sense, gather the specific required information that would be taking investigation forward, right? And such platforms can also reduce the fear of retaliation, provide necessary infrastructure, expertise to also handle those whistleblower reports effectively. Now, the use of technologies will aid SMEs to have that level of complexity that they require in order to provide for independence and also protection going forward. Now, furthermore, I also like to expand that SMEs should focus on building a strong ethical culture within, regular training getting your staff to understand what is reporting in good faith and why is it so important to report suspicious activity and how it could impact the organization if they do not, right? And leadership must be demonstrated. The commitment from the top is very important, right? No matter how small or how big the company is. And this approach will definitely help SMEs break those barriers and have effective whistleblower protection and mechanism going forward.
Thank you, Ryan. It's clear that smaller companies face unique hurdles in compliance, and it's very interesting experience of establishing the third-party reporting system. Now, going to another practical perspective, let's hear from Brian. Brian, could you paint us a picture of how organization has managed a whistleblower case from report submission to resolution?
Thank you, Azad. Before answering that question, I would like to remind that I said that we need to designate a person or a department. So in technical words, that means that the company should designate a whistleblower committee, right? So that means that this committee would help to handle this kind of report. So to show you an example for the case. So I remember that last year I received an email that report a possible unethical behavior in a construction material purchase contract. So as soon as the committee received the email, they try to contact the reporter, the whistleblower, right? So that was an employee. So to let him know that his rights, the confidentiality that the process has, and of course, that all the information that this person provides us, it will be anonymous. So that's the topic to highlight here. So from the beginning, we need to let the reporters know that this kind of report had a specific process, right? So we also inform to the whistleblower that we need as much information as we can obtain to further investigate the unethical behavior that he just reported to us. So the second thing that I'd like to highlight here, it is that the whistleblower committee, which includes an independent complaint review process and of course an independent reporting line. So Anna talked about before in the presentation that this topic. So I would like to highlight this part because this allows the companies to get more information, right? To know the real unethical behavior in the company. And of course, I would like to describe some important details for the whistleblower committee. So the companies should understand that this committee made up of members of all levels. So that means that the committee should be included with compliance, legal, HR, and audit staff. So this diversity of employees allows to get a fully objective perspective of the report. And of course, thanks to the whistleblower committee that we have in the company, we were able to collaborate with the whistleblower to obtain more information and of course to get more comprehensive investigation in this case.
Thank you, Brian. That real-world example is insightful for anyone setting up or refining their processes within whistleblower protection mechanisms. So as we continue our discussion, it is essential to explore how technology and best practices can further enhance whistleblower protection and how high-profile cases influence public perception and corporate policies. So, Raymond, let's start with you. How can we leverage new technologies and artificial intelligence to improve whistleblower reporting mechanisms and ensure confidentiality? What do you see as other upcoming trends in whistleblower protection?
Thank you, Let me just share a bit of our learning curve at Grey Matter, right? So in the past, we had worked with, of course, online platforms being set up, simple forms being put up there, and then you have individual whistleblowers coming in, filling up those forms and providing us feedback. Now, we also catered for anonymous whistleblowers. Now, the problem here is this. Sometimes whistleblowers do not know what is important information for the investigators, right? Because they just provide information on the surface and they don't provide the identity as well, because some of them are anonymous whistleblowers. So we saw, how do we now create a chatbot, a simple chatbot, where you could have an if-else based response, where if someone gives you information, what are the questions to ask next, what to prompt further. So from there on, we then saw the rise of AI. We saw leveraging new technologies, how AI could then work towards betterment of such chatbots. And of course, now my team is working on training data. So we have an enormous amount of data that we've collected, trying to train this data to ensure that it could be more of a human touch to further enhance these chatbots to gather the information that investigators require when conducting investigation, right? So AI is definitely significantly would enhance whistleblower reporting mechanisms, provide for confidentiality, improving its efficiency. Another fact that I would like to emphasize here is also that it would make it easier for investigators to prioritize cases as well. Because based on information received by these chatbots, we then look at prioritizing them based on risk, based on the level of complexity, based on the impact of the suspicious behavior. How can we then push things forward? So definitely using natural language processing, these chatbots will collect comprehensive and accurate information while conducting initial analysis, prioritize cases based on urgency and its severity. Now, also to highlight, we have blockchain technology, which we are looking into now. We have not implemented it yet, but we're looking into how we can further enhance security, immutability of those reports that come in. Of course, we are still looking into how this can be implemented to create tamper-proof records. Blockchain would definitely ensure that data will not be altered, not deleted, and would enhance transparency. For example, the number of reports that have come in, whether they have been worked on, whether there's any reports that have been discarded and whatnot. And integrating both of these technologies is how we see things going forward. And we'll continue to develop the mechanism or the platform that we currently have using such technologies going forward as well.
Wow, Brian, Raymond, so many new tools are in use, and it's really exciting to hear about technological advancements that are really helpful in protecting whistleblowers. So, but creating a supportive culture is equally important. So, Brian, could you please share some best practices for creating a culture that encourages employees to report unethical behavior without fear?
Yes, that. So the first thing that I like to explain is that, I mean, the human behavior can be educated, right? So the first thing that we need to focus on is to get a commitment from the companies to create a functional whistleblower program. So that means that the commitment that I just said should be ingrained to the corporate values. So the first thing that we need to know is that the people, I mean, the employee and the people in general can be educated to know what is an ethical behavior and, of course, an unethical behavior. So that can help to get the guidelines to handle the ethical inside of the companies. So the second thing that we need to analyze is that, and I know that it sounds easy, but the company needs to believe in changes. I mean, it is a cycle process to understand that it is necessary to transform the organization cultural. So that means that the employee can be able to understand what is the company ethical guidelines and how to identify behaviors that go against to these ethical and, of course, the corporate values. And also, it is important that the companies can be able to allocate economic and human resources as a minimum. So that means that every company should decide what resources they're going to use for this process And of course, it is important to know that it is easy to get support from private or public entities to get a training process. And lastly, companies must take action in case where unethical behavior is confirmed. So that means that the companies needs to set in a precedent, right? So always ensuring a due process and confirming the information as much as possible.
Thank you, Brian. So many issues, and still every issue has its own solution. And of course, encouraging a supportive culture is key to effective whistleblower policy. But what about the impact of high-profile cases? Christian, based on your experience and research, have high-profile whistleblower cases influenced the public perception and corporate policies regarding whistleblowing? In what sense has this happened?
Yeah, I think when we talk about high-profile whistleblower cases, right, we think about people like Edward Snowden or Julian Assange. And of course, these kind of cases attract a lot of media attention, a lot of public attention, right, which has certain importance to the case of whistleblowing. But at the same time, we see in this discussion always this discussion going on, is the whistleblower a hero or is he a traitor, right? And this is then sometimes a little bit difficult discussion going on. And to be honest, from a company perspective, for example, if you think about this, right, normally it's like this. If the whistleblower blows the whistle on something that goes against the company, then he's considered a hero, right? So, for example, if someone steals from the company money and there is someone blowing the whistle on that, and the company can then stop this money flowing out of the company, right? Then he or she is considered a hero. On the other case, right, sometimes companies, they benefit from this misconduct, right? So, for example, if the company is bribing someone else to get contracts, right? So maybe then the company is not willing that someone is blowing the whistle on that, right? So then this whistleblower is considered a traitor, right? So I think at a company perspective, we need to be aware, right, that every misconduct at the end is against the company, right? Even if the company seems to benefit in the first place from this, right? So we need to encourage all kinds of reporting, and we need to make sure that all whistleblowers are protected the same way, irrespectively of what kind of wrongdoing they are blowing the whistle on, right? So I think with these high-profile cases, there is this, so it creates an attention to this case, and I think from a political perspective, this is important, but for all these small whistleblowers, let's calling like that, because companies receive several hundred, even thousands of reports every year, right, around the globe, right? And not all of them are, a very small percentage is high profile, right? But we need to encourage all these others as well, right? And if we see then these high profile cases, a lot at stake, right, then this might even discourage some people to speak up, right? Because they think, oh, when I see what happened to Julian Assange, what happened to Edward Snowden, maybe I will not get involved in things like that, right? So therefore, I think we need to send a positive message, and for that, we also need to create this understanding of the companies that they need to welcome all kinds of reports as long as they are in good faith, as we already learned today, and as long as they report on misconduct, right, irrespectively if the company seems to benefit from it in the first place or not.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, dear panelists, for the detailed answers. Now is the time for the Q&A session, but I just realized that we are out of time, and still I'd like to ask at least one question from the chat, because we promised to do so. So dear speakers, dear presenters, decide who will answer, or maybe you will answer and complement each other, but at least one question. How can you measure the effectiveness or the awareness of whistleblowing channels? Because the often used metrics like total cases, percentage of cases closed, cases divided by topic, look at the result of reporting, but not the availability and actual adoption of the reporting channels. Dear colleagues, who will take the lead and start answering this question?
Probably I would just start off first, Azad. Yeah, I mean, what we have done in the past, we have done surveys to understand the staff within the organization know where to report and what kind of incidences to report on. And not to, I mean, the reason we do that is also because some organizations have multiple different channels, some for grievances, some for whistleblowing and such. So there are multiple, how do they designate these different channels? Do they also understand what is reporting in good faith? And how do they define reporting in good faith? And what are the different types of legal or policy-related issues that they should bring up? And what are the concerns that they, I mean, the red flags they should look out for and things like that. So we've done surveys before, and we find that to be kind of effective to understand, to see the level of awareness within the staff, right? Whether they know what is there and how is it implemented, and whether it's independent and whether they do have protection or not. So that is a bit of my take on how to answer the question.
Thank you. Thank you. And are there any addings?
Yeah, maybe just one thing, because when talking to companies, a lot of companies think, oh, look, we are very good. We have a system, but we have no cases. That's fantastic, right? No, it is not, right? So based on our knowledge, we know that if you implement your system right, you will receive cases. And then to show, so to measure the effectiveness is really a crucial thing, right? We are not already there where we need to be, but just claiming that we don't receive cases, so therefore we are a very compliant company, is definitely not the right one.
Right. Any other answers?
Yes, Azad, I would like to add that, I mean, Christian have a point that the companies that doesn't have the report, it's not the same that it's a transparent company, of course, because the idea to get the report line means that the company need to put an effort to educate employees to use it. Because I know that in my experience here in Colombia and of course in South America, it is common to know that all the companies and in public and private sector has the reporting line, but of course they don't receive any report, and it is because the people in general are not educated to use it, and of course doesn't know how to use it because the people feel afraid to retaliation. And here in Colombia, of course, we have a context of violence that it's related to the value to report in a good faith. So I think that maybe it is important to highlight that it is necessary to get the process to educate how to use it, and of course provide truth and encourage to use it.
Thank you, dear colleagues. Dear participants, thank you for staying with us. We appreciate your time, but stay with us for a little bit longer. We have some important updates for you, but before that, I'd like to ask you to provide your feedback regarding today's webinar. This is very important. because your opinion will help us to improve our next events and make them more relevant for your needs. Please, you can do this through the short poll. Dear colleagues, please show us the QR code so our participants could help us to share, to understand how good we were today, or maybe how bad we were today. And while you're answering the questions, Anna, could you kindly share the updates with our participants?
Of course. Thank you, Azad. I believe we do have also a slide for that. Yes, thank you so much. So our updates in terms of UNODC and the UN Global Compact, we are working on updating the 2013 publication, an anti-corruption ethics and compliance program for business, a practical guide. We aim to launch it in 2025. Internally in Global Compact, we have what we call Think Labs with key companies from all around the world, and we already host 2 sessions in May and July this year. Another one is coming in October. Through these sessions, we are applying a transformational governance lens, what we call the sustainability and corporate governance lens to this guide, so that we can incorporate, for example, artificial intelligence, the gender perspective on this guide that was very successfully launched 10 years ago. We are, both of us, United Nations Global Compact and UNODC, updating the e-learning tool, Doing Business with Integrity. We aim at launching it this September during the UNGA week, the United Nations General Assembly week in New York. This is an update of a previous e-learning that both organizations had, the fight against corruption. Now it was updated, and it's called Doing Business with Integrity. In terms of upcoming events, we are celebrating this year the 20th anniversary of the United Nations Global Principle 10. It's our anti-corruption principle. We will celebrate this year together with our main event of the year, which is the Leader Summit in September. We also have an event for Unstoppable Africa, also in September. And this session, this is a deep dive academy session that we host together. The next one, it's going to, and the last one of the year, it's going to be in October. And the theme is going to be the role of communication and reporting in ethics and compliance. In terms of the management model that I showed at the beginning of the webinar, this is going to conclude the management model. So it's the reporting part. So what do the company report in the end of the implementation of its compliance program? So sign up for this. We're going to meet together on October 10th. Azad, over to you to close our beautiful webinar.
Thank you, dear Anna. Dear participants, please, once again, let me ask you for sharing your opinion with us. Sorry that we could not have the QR code for a bit longer. We really need your feedback. And also, thank you very much for staying with us. You are the most beautiful audience that we have. And we will work for you and try to do the most interesting webinars in the future. And we will try to make them most relevant to your practice. So your feedback is really appreciated. I also wanted to thank all our presenters and panelists. Thank you for your great work. You provided a lot of very useful and very important information. I took for myself a lot of ideas from your speeches, and I wish to see you next time, and I hope I will have a chance to see you next time at this webinar series. Thank you, everyone, and good luck until the next time. Goodbye.
Thank you, all of you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.